As Chief Sports Officer for Leeds City Council, may I take this opportunity to welcome you to the first Leeds Youth Games.
Yeah, I think we would like to do it every year because it's fun and it's an activity to get out of the house as well. And it's nice to see all what the people have been getting up to.
Being a good day out, it's better than staying at home. Should do it every year for kids' success.
Yeah. I think it should happen more often.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
It's good if you could have like different sporting events during it.
What sort of sporting events would you like to see?
Hockey, football,
Swimming, basketball,
badminton,
running, tennis,
all sorts.
anything.
Deep in the heart of Yorkshire lies the world-famous village of Haworth, visited by thousands of people each year who make the trip to see the old parsonage once lived in by the Bronte family. The parsonage is just a few miles away from the lively market town of Keighley, halfway between the historic industrial city of Bradford and Skipton, gateway to the Dales. It's long been known that rugby and beer go together, and Keighley is no exception, having produced a well-loved rugby team in the Cougars and arguably the finest bitter in the world. At the centre of Keighley, the War Memorial stands as a focal point of a growing future, forging a link between past and present. Nothing illustrates this better than the traditional brewing of beer. Since the turn of the century, brewing beer has been an important aspect of the town's character. Let's now take a look at the Worth Brewery and find out all there is to know about the brewer's art. The week begins with the delivery of malt, malt being the major ingredient of beer. Over 50 tonnes of crushed malt are used every year, with weekly deliveries of up to 2 tonnes at a time needed to top up Worth's malt stock. Of course, only traditional ingredients are used by the brewery. Worth use a minimum blend of 4 different malts in each brew, and the crushed malt is prepared from 2 types of barley, called Maris Otter and Halcyon. All the malt comes from Beeston Maltings in Nottingham. Converted from a brewery, there's been a maltings at Beeston for more than 100 years. Regular deliveries of barley help to fill the huge tanks at the maltings. Trevor Havard, the head maltster at Beeston, takes us through the age-old tradition of floor maltings.
Beeston Maltings is a traditional floor maltings and it produces finest pale ale malts for some of the best beers that are produced in the country. We have centred our production on small breweries who are very fastidious about the type of malt they want, and as such we buy the best raw materials in the first place. And the best raw material is malting barley, which is used for the various processes that we go through. And this barley is grown in the principal barley growing areas of the country, Norfolk, Suffolk and in the eastern counties, and we have it all contract grown by farmers, especially for us. We pay a premium to the farmer in order to obtain the best possible supplies.
A conveyor belt moves the barley into steeping tanks, where the grain is soaked in water. The water's drained off, and then it's time to spread the barley onto the maltings floor below, where it's fooled into germinating. At all times, the germination is controlled by temperature and can be altered by changing the thickness of the layers of barley. The floor is constantly turned and raked by the handful of workers, converting the starch within the grain into sugar. It's a labour-intensive process. It can either be done by hand or by more modern methods. It's easy to tell when the barley's germinated, as little shoots start to appear from the grain. As well as traditional hand and eye methods of watching the malt, Beeston's on-site laboratory checks the malt's progress before it's kilned.
We mill the grain through the crusher to crush it ready for the brewer to brew with, and this is dispatched in small sacks which are stitched and sent throughout the country.
Beeston supply a large number of small independent brewers with their high-quality malt, and for traditional ingredients there's simply nowhere better. The excellence of the ingredients has helped Worth to produce distinctive and award-winning beer. Nearest Stout is a particular favourite, made from roast barley, giving the beer that characteristic bitterness. The art of brewing starts with the blending of the malt, and with a different recipe used for each beer brewed, it's important to get it right. All of Worth's beers are carefully weighed out by hand, and only when the blend has been checked can all the malt be emptied into the giant tank called the mash tun. The malt is now thoroughly mixed with hot water at 66 degrees Celsius. This starts breaking the starches in the malt back into sugar again. It takes a couple of hours and the mixture is called a mash, and after the 2 hours is up, more water is rinsed through. The hot sweet liquid drained off the mash is called wort and is immediately pumped into a boiling vessel known as the copper. This is steam heated by a set of coils inside the container. The wort's very strong at first, but gradually becomes weaker with the water rinsing over the mash. The steam's now turned on in the copper, bringing the wort to the boil. Hops are added depending on how bitter the beer needs to be. Bob Brown, the head brewer, always takes time to look at all the raw materials. Hops at Worth are selected for aroma rather than bitterness. The hopback is the next vessel used, and is nothing more than a giant tea strainer. All of the contents from the copper are pumped quickly into the hopback and left to settle, and as the perforated false bottom collects the hops, the still hot worts can be cooled down by using a heat exchanger. Fermentation is the single most important stage in brewing, where the yeast ferments the now cool sugary wort into beer. Every brewery has its own type of yeast, and Worth is no exception. As the yeast is added, it converts all of the sugar in the wort into alcohol. Once the wort is in the fermenting vessel and the yeast has been added to the brew, the strength of the beer changes gradually as the sugar is converted to alcohol. It takes a normal strength beer 3 to 4 days to ferment, but the stronger the beer, the longer the time it spends in the fermentation tanks. When the beer is the right strength, the yeast is skimmed off the top. The yeast, the used grain and many other byproducts are recycled. Nothing is wasted. The grain will be collected by a local farmer, and even the used hops will go to an allotment. Unlike many independent brewers, Worth refuse to use chemicals in the washing and cleaning of their casks. Only water and steam are used. Right down to the final stage in the process, the strength of the brew is closely monitored, making sure the beer's gravity is correct before the cask can be filled. The beer's gravity is checked by using an instrument called a saccharometer, which measures the amount of alcohol produced in the beer. The casks are filled by hand directly from the fermentation tanks. The beer is then fined before it can be sealed for delivery. The finings which are added are extracted from, of all things, fish, and are needed to help clarify and clear the beer. Quality control is the end stage for the Worth Brewery, when all the beer is checked for aroma, colour and of course taste, before it's allowed to be delivered. Again, the head brewer is there to guarantee that only the finest beer leaves the brewery. Worth's last delivery of the day is to the Red Pig on Church Street in Keighley, which is the closest pub to the brewery. From as far away as London to as close as Keighley, Worth delivers to a whole range of free trade outlets. It's taken many centuries for the brewing process to evolve. The method of delivery, though, remains the same, though the dray horses have now been replaced by a different form of horsepower. The casks are stored in the cellar where it's cool. Time's allowed for the contents to settle. The quality control continues in the pub. The landlord carries out daily checks to make sure the beer's clear and bright. It's important everything's just right before the ale can be enjoyed. Worth Brewery was started in 1992 by enthusiasts to produce award-winning beers, and now creates a range of more than 8 exclusive ales on a constant basis, including seasonal beers. More than 1.5 million pints of Worth beer have been enjoyed across the country, so wherever you go, you can be sure that a pint of Worth's will be worth drinking.